Hey, it's Jacob Berry, and this throwback episode of the Dealership Fix It podcast, we sat down with Nate Sanel, founder of the National Powersports Distributors, Bank My Bike, and one of the sharpest minds when it comes to scaling a dealership by doing things differently. Now, Nate started out with $500 in his pocket and a pickup truck, and he built one of the most trusted used bike operations in the country. In this episode, he covers why transparency still beats technology, how used inventory became a premium business for him, not just a side hustle, what power sports dealers miss by copying automotive models, and how to stop working in your business and start working on it. This one is packed with real strategy, honest takes, and a ton of lessons for any dealership trying to build something that they're proud of. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next episode. And if you get value from this one, make sure to shoot it on over to a bestie in the power sports business who could use it. So let's get into it.
You are listening to episode number 43, and today I'm going coast to coast, again, as they say. I've got a guest on from almost as far in the East Coast as you can go, almost as far away from me. But I've got the founder of a place called National Powersports Distributors, which is also Concord Triumph, New Hampshire. And the guy I've got on is Nate Sanel. Nate, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, just to kind of, maybe the best way to jump in, and, obviously people listening probably know a little bit about who I am. Maybe they know who you are, maybe they don't. But maybe tell us a little bit about where you came from, where you're at, what you got going on these days.
Sure. So I started National Powersports in my garage legitimately with $500. Back in, it was right after September 11th, so it was late 2001, early 2002 is when I decided to officially go for it. I was working for a startup, and they didn't get their another round of funding, and I had always wanted to own my own business. So I had been selling stuff on the side on eBay. And that was pretty much the golden era of eBay. My wife and I were convinced that you could put like one used running shoe on eBay and somebody would buy it. So after September 11th, the stock market crashed. And while we were waiting for the stock market to reopen, I think it was 2 or 3 days, I just said to my wife, I said, this is crazy. I said, we're investing in putting money away for retirement that's completely predicated on people's emotional state. It has nothing to do with, I shouldn't say nothing, but it's much more to do with the nation's emotional state than it does with the health of the companies that you're investing in. And it was an area I wasn't familiar with. And I said to her, let's take the money that we're putting in the mutual funds every month, and I'm going to buy an old motorcycle. I've been into motorcycles my whole life. And so I'll buy a motorcycle, I'll fix it up, and we'll sell it on eBay. Maybe somebody local will buy it. So I started putting ads in the newspaper saying I buy used motorcycles, and people started calling, and I started driving out to people's homes with cash and throwing their old motorcycles in my pickup truck and taking them back to my garage and fixing them up. And when the company I was working for finally announced that they weren't going to make it, I had been doing it for a month or two, and I had seen how much more my money compounded when I was actively exercising it rather than parking it somewhere. And we formed what is still called the Collectible Trader. Now it's doing business as National Powersports. But when I first started, I really didn't anticipate selling modern bikes. I was kind of going after that niche of vintage and collectible and unique. And I thought, if you can find something unique in somebody's basement, then with the internet, you can find out where the demand is. But along the way, as I started selling more and more bikes, what would happen is I'd ship a bike to somebody in Texas or something, and they'd find something wrong with it. And I always felt terrible. And whenever somebody would find something wrong with a bike that I didn't find, I had a condition report. I would start okay, I've got to check the charging system output of these bikes. I in the past, if I got a bike and it started, I cleaned it up, I sold it as running, but maybe the charging system wasn't charging and I didn't know. And so all these things, it started evolving into a much, much deeper dive on the bikes. And then I started getting requests from people all over the country saying, hey, do you have a Yamaha? Do you have a V-Star 650? And I was like, why would you want a V-Star 650 from New Hampshire when you're in Chicago and you can find one at 12 dealers around you? And I realized probably the most crucial part of growing the business, I mean, it is the most crucial part of the business, certainly online, was trust means everything. And so, transparency is a big buzzword right now, but that's just a code word for do shit that makes people trust you, be trustworthy. And in our industry, used bikes up to that point, really, I mean, you're talking, 18 years ago, they were second-class citizens in the dealership. And I took something that, typically, and I'm very much stereotyping because everybody wasn't like this, but a lot of dealerships turned their nose down at used. They didn't take them in. They weren't comfortable with what they're not familiar with. So I had an opportunity to attack a small area of the market in a very unique way. And that's what grew National Powersports. We just took all those principles and just scaled it and grew them and did a lot of things around the principle of telling the truth.
Well, the advocate role, right, is I think, at least for me, anytime I'm interacting as a consumer to do something, I expect I'm showing up to buy from somebody something, and I expect them to ask me the right questions to give them the right information to get the process done. And obviously that's, to me, the level of being an advocate or concierge or whatever, however you look at it, is really, I think, is really the bar that we're continuing to get set. But I think, I mean, you're finding you did then, and maybe now are a lot of, folks that are in our business, are they missing that mark pretty far then currently, I guess?
I think the trend is going the right way. I think, you know what motivates everybody to do it the right way? When it's profitable. And, if your method's not working, it's not profitable, you might be looking at some other methods. I mean, it seems to me, it feels like there's a big division going on. There's gigantic consolidation and roll-ups going on. And it feels sometimes like some of those places are more emulating the automotive industry. And I don't want to. I haven't found a lot that I find I would want to do in a different way. As a matter of fact, I really don't even look at the motorcycle industry to make almost any of the decisions that we do. We're really more looking at the people that buy our products, where they are, and that sort of thing. Demographics, and these sorts of what's the word? Not even logistics, but those sort of statistics. I spend a lot of time looking at that, trying not to be influenced by what we're, quote, supposed to be doing in our industry. I mean, we just serve people. You don't need to know anything more than that. Just serve your customer.
I found, having been a manufacturer representative, that the manufacturer, ultimately relies a lot on all the things that aren't them to make it happen, right? They rely on themselves to, engineer and build the product and can handle the distribution to your doorstep. Beyond that, right? I think they rely on guys like yourself who think outside of the box, if that's the right term to use, who aren't saying, what's the normal procedure and how can I do it better? Well, when you and I talked about something like that last time, I think what you replied to me was that you didn't look at existing procedures and try to make them better. You looked at, what's the best way to, serve the customer. And it doesn't, always involve looking back at what exists. It involves, how would I do this, and then making it happen.
Yeah, actually, forecasting is something that I try to bring into anything that I do. And I think if you gather a lot of data and you extrapolate it forward, sometimes it's a massive advantage. And this is an area where I'm actually surprised that the OEMs aren't. I have to speak. I don't want to speak in generalities because my experience is limited. I mean, I've been a Royal Enfield dealer. I was a Kimco dealer, but Triumph is the first real, typical OEM that we've carried. And something that always struck me is whose responsibility is production? Whose responsibility is it? You've got great engineers, great products, great marketing, but when it comes time to forecasting what demand will be, that's the great magic 8 ball that nobody seems to be able to figure out. And, like Triumph has made massive improvements. There used to be a lot of inventory in the field, in the past, and they've done a way better job on anticipating demand. But I still feel a tiny bit resentful when demand doesn't meet production, and the ones who have to shoulder the brunt of the mistake is the dealers, because it's my money. It might be a line of credit. It doesn't matter. That's money coming out of my wallet. I've agreed to sell your products. I've agreed to represent them a certain way. But dealers are getting buried with, min rep in widening and increasing. And it's not just, you get the min rep and you've got a certain amount of width, but the depth that you need to stock to have an appropriate inventory to make customers feel like you can supply their demand, balanced with sitting on leftovers or sitting on bikes that you have to discount in order to move. I sometimes don't understand why the independent dealer whose mortgage depends on this has to shoulder that brunt. So that's one of the things that I'd like to, as we work forward, we try to work pretty hard with the OEMs, but it's completely out of our control. Production is completely out of our control.
I've seen some dealers, at least, at individual dealer level, that have mentioned things like, yeah, we told our brand X rep, we're just not taking that order. We're just not doing it, and they'll push back, and they'll maybe say there's several models they just decided, no, we're not taking it, just not doing it. And I was like, well, okay, interesting. I remember when I was with Honda and you really, it didn't go very well for a dealer when they would do that. Obviously the times have shifted and because of all that, and that, that was prior to a recession. So it was a different time and heavy inventories, but do you get to see any of that? Is there any sort of a flexibility, or is it just as they continue to, split hairs on what models what, and then add another one because they're sure there's a customer for that exact niche, I guess, or are they allowing flexibility? I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, that's always the tough part, but I can't imagine. I've got to say this. I can't imagine another OEM working with us as strongly as they do. They do value the relationship with their dealer, and we just came from the dealer meeting, and I don't think I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid. The people there are great people, and they have worked with us. They've been really good they definitely listen, and they want to know these sorts of issues that compound or that impact us. And I would have to say, there is some flexibility. It's just like anything. People do business with people. If you walk up to somebody, you shove them against the wall, they have no choice but to push back. So I think, what you get with any manufacturer, any human being, has a lot to do with how the conversation goes, how you communicate. Yeah. And I found excellent communication with them. So I can only speak for Triumph, but I think it's a much bigger issue when you get into, let's not play whose fault it is. Let's play, what can you do? What could you do to try to forecast demand? And I think they're doing a lot of things to do just that. They release the models early. We get parties, we get pre-orders, and they can gauge interest certainly much better that way than just producing a bunch. I'm sure when you're the one building the bike, you're a little close to it when you get super excited after 3 years of watching it go from idea to, physical thing. I'm sure it's kind of hard to be removed from that.
I run into, have through so many years. And again, I take it with a grain of salt. I've never had my house on the line, right, for my business, like you and like all these dealerships that listen to this, or let's say dealer principals that are listening to this or that. But I can tell you that I do run into a lot of dealerships where I'm looking and I'm like, okay, so I saw a glimmer of hope in something that they've said on their website somewhere, but it doesn't, let's say, it doesn't make it to the place like to me, like Cycle Trader, for example, it doesn't make it to me. Their message is not coming across. They're not choosing to say, hey, here's our sort of our core tenets. Here's our most pivotal belief on what differentiates us or why we got into this business 5, 10, 20, whatever years ago. Here's what we really firmly believe in. That seems to be missing a lot. And I don't know if that's, I've worked with dealers and been like, hey, this is part of what I see as wow factor, because I see the marketplace. I see who else is out there. I see what they're showcasing, what they have, what they're missing. And I get a lot of times, I don't know if they really know that. I don't know if it's that they're not sure if that's the right message, or if they feel like having any sort of a strong stance on a message is worse, maybe to be more vanilla is what they're hoping will gain more people. More people will like my message because it's not as pointy, or whatever. So I don't know.
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think so. I think it's a universal problem. I don't think it's unique to motorcycle or automotive. I do a little bit of business consulting on the side, and I really like to work with small startups, people that really, it wasn't that long where my office was in my basement and, I had 30 motorcycles crammed in my garage. And it's, there's most businesses, I don't know what the statistics are now, but the rule I always heard was 80% of most businesses fail in the first 2 years. And then 80% of the businesses that make it, the first 2 years fail in the next 2. And I think I read a book that was really influential when I was working in my basement, and it's a little book called The E-Myth Revisited by an author named Michael Gerber. And now it's turned into this whole franchise and training and all this. But back then it was one simple book, and it was about this woman who owned a pie shop who had started her business because everybody loved her pies. And she made the best pies, and everyone convinced her, you have to have a shop. And fast forward 4 years later, she's getting up at 3 a.m. She's working till 10 at night. She's not making any money. Rent's going up. She's stressed. And sounds like a pretty typical business that most people almost romanticize about. That's what a business, being a business owner is. But there's a fatal flaw in this, because what he points out, and everybody's heard this term, she was working in her business nonstop, not on her business. And there's a big difference between gaining the skills that you need to run a business, being honest with yourself about what you're not good at, and either learning those skills or hiring people that have them and giving the autonomy to let them use their knowledge in a way for you. So you've got most business owners are technicians. They know how to do the work, and they're good at it. Usually they're really good at it. A great mechanic decides he's going to open his own business, and they end up doing everything but what they're good at because they're the owner.
Don't let them talk to customers.
Right. Well, yeah, the owners always give the shit away too, right? It's always like every business, give them a discount. I didn't ask for a discount. It's like
I sensed that you wanted one.
Right, exactly. Like, thanks. You didn't have to, but you just made it harder for yourself. But what was I going to say on that?
I know. Sorry.
No. It's fine. But if you're a technician and you're opening a business because you know how to do the work, you don't have the whole picture yet. And in terms of when you're working your ass off and 90 hours a week and you're really not making a lot of money, what's going to keep you going? I mean, when you have something, sometimes it takes a tragedy in your life to give you something outside of money to motivate you to do something. And I try to do something before something that's that impactful. Try to create your own personal tragedy to say, how do you want to live your life? And is this business going to serve you? And if you were going to build it that way, what would it look like? So for me, every step along the way, it wasn't about maximizing how much money I take out of this company. It's growing it so I can add more people, so I can do bigger things, so I can continue to live a lifestyle that's not chained to that business. And that was something that I was dedicated to from day one. So if you have a reason for being outside of just profitability, you'll make decisions. You have a compass. I guess that's the best way to say it. If you don't have that compass, you'll go whichever way the needle's pointing, whichever way the money's pointing. And I've been very, very fortunate to find something that resonated deeply with me personally that I could bring into the business, and it resonated with not only our customers, but people who want to work for us. And it's the simple thing. It's the simplest thing. It's 3 words. Tell the truth. My whole entire dealership, everything that we do comes back to that litmus test. Everything that we do. And we don't talk a lot about it in public because it sounds like bullshit. You know what I mean? It's like, it sounds like a marketing plan, but it's not. It's our compass that drives every decision that we make. Because if it's not telling the truth, if it's a program we come up with and it's not truthful, straightforward, easy to understand, but most deeply truthful, then it has no place at my company ever. And that's the kind of thing that you need. I think you need desperately, if you're going to put 5, 10, 15, 20 years of the rest of your life into this, into your company, into your living, breathing entity that you're creating and being at every day.
How many dealer visits to your door of consumers do you get versus stuff that you're interacting with them on a web basis? Is that something you want to talk about? Because you obviously you're shifting it and shifting it more so to make sure everybody can see you, everybody can bring you into play, even when they're not local. Do you get a good amount of street traffic?
Yeah, we do. And what we find is, I'm sure everybody finds this in today's day and age, is outside of locals who have already bought 3 or 4 bikes from us, or people that just like to come in and just look at all the new bikes. Everybody found us online, and whether or not we ship them a bike or whether they come in, I used to track the difference, because when I started, I was all online. I really never thought I was going to do brick and mortar. I thought it was a dead idea. I really did. But when you start having 100, 200, 300, 500 bikes in stock, people want to come in and look at them. So I kind of had to adapt the online way we were selling to selling in person. So we did it a little bit backwards. But in today's day and age, I don't even have a door counter. I was supposed to do it for my 20 group. I don't know what I don't even know what my door swings are, because I don't care, because my real door swing, my door is online. And I don't suppose there's any problem in sharing this. People will think I'm full of shit, but we have 60,000 unique people walking through our door every month into our website. That's every month, 60,000. So I don't really care how many people actually end up walking in through the door. I have a huge audience to pull from, and a big captive audience. So, years and years and years of building online presence and marketing has gained us a lot of traffic all over.
Where does Powersports need to go? What needs to change? I mean, obviously there's all these conversations about getting new riders in, right? That's a sort of a question mark about that. We miss a generation because, not enough of them rode dirt bikes as kids and whatnot. And now those are grown adults and they're not riding. Or is it price point sort of bikes? And some of these manufacturers have gotten their price points out of whack, which makes used obviously very attractive to maybe get people re-entered in at a budget sort of price point. But where are we headed? I mean, what do you kind of foresee, or what do you think needs to be?
That's a tough question, because I kind of removed myself from the industry a lot, to be dead honest with you. I mean, I'm not too vested. I'm vested as it gets in making sure that we continue to have another, generations to come enjoying motorcycles. But I kind of take more the point of view as I'll change with the market. I mean, you go where the demand is. If your market wants cruisers, you sell cruisers. If no one wants cruisers, they want sport bikes, you sell sport bikes. So I don't know. I mean, from what I've seen, with the limited amount that I've seen, looking at dealerships' financials. We talked about marketing and used. And I think obviously everybody's keyed in right now to the fact that they want to do more used, and they know it's more profitable than an OEM, but they don't know how to do it. And I think there's opportunities there. That's something that we're looking at right now. We're not looking at, we're moving in the direction of taking the software that we've built and taking the things that we've learned over 18 years. I mean, the granular data that we have we've been online for 18 years, the buying habits and all the data that we have, it's deep. It's way deeper than anybody could right now. I mean, it would take them years to even figure out what are the sorts of things that you should be tracking. And taking that knowledge of used and bringing it out to help other dealerships, I really, as I've gotten to know a lot of the Triumph dealers, and there's a lot, man, they're people working their ass off for the most part. They're people that love motorcycles and working their butt off, and they're doing what they think they should be doing, and they know they should be doing more used, but they really don't know how to do it. And so I think, what the industry looks like for me, it's take what we've been doing, don't be selfish with it, and develop these into tools that other people can use to improve their profitability, their bottom line. Because, it's not good for the industry when people talk about dealerships closing and leftovers on the floor. And we're in a day and age right now where the internet makes all of these problems solvable, but you're going to have to do some things differently. And I think our industry, what our industry needs is what most older legacy businesses need. I was in the auto parts business. It's old business, 3, 4, 5 generations now. And it was the same thing. It's the same, I think the way technology has, the speed at which technology has moved and will continue to increase. If you don't have people in your dealership that understand code and programming and demographics and how online advertising works, it's almost like it's a completely different business. So what the business looks like is if you're going to grow your business and you're going to be healthy, you got to do a deep dive in what is working in your business and what isn't. And if it's not working, change it. Find some resources. You might not have the answers, but start asking people. So I spend a lot of time trying to talk with people that are smarter than me and taking ideas in. And so I don't know. The business to me looks like the same it did 18 years ago. It looks like opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And maybe that's just the difference of how I look at the world, and maybe that's what needs to change in dealership before anything changes. But as far as the industry goes, our industry is under look, you've got Carvana, right? Mm-hmm. Carvana is what I wanted to be 15 years ago, radically easy. Now, they've got their flaws, and they're not doing great financially, and I don't even know if they're going to make it. But it's just this idea that if you're going to improve your business, it's not going to happen by default. It is going to happen by actions that you take.
That's sort of the rearview mirror concept is one that I find so interesting because, if like you're talking about with different data, if you're going to make the time to evaluate some data, right, and you've got, here's the data. Well, it's all rearview mirror stuff. What sort of sources do you have to provide you out the front windshield stuff, to make those decisions and make it with windshield and rear view, with the proper balance, which I don't know what that is, but I tend to find, a lot of conversations, and they're a lot about the rearview mirror. And I think a lot of times I think, well, what sort of data do you have that will show you what maybe a trend is coming, and tougher, but
Yeah, a lot tougher. It's really easy to look backwards. The past has already happened. That's piece of cake. But if you're always living there, then you can't even see what the road in front of you is. Right. Really cliche, but it's really true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Humans aren't good at being sort of way up and outside of the scenario and in the scenario, are we?
Yeah. That's that working on your business versus working in your business thing again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. We get caught up. We get caught up in the stress of the moment.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I feel like we're winding down and gotten to a pretty decent little conversation here. It's a little longer than I did. Didn't even take a little commercial break or anything. So we'll just roll and somebody have just one chock full of actual information, not my little silly commercial that usually goes in the middle. So.
Well, I appreciate you having me on and letting me rant and rave.
No, absolutely.
But I'm passionate about business just because, there are people at, it's somebody's wallet, it's somebody's life, it's somebody's mortgage, it's somebody's stress. And when you see dealerships doing things or not doing things that could really help them, it bums me out. And it's exciting when you do connect with somebody and work with them and give them an idea, or they come up with an idea and you see them run with it. It's just that's where business is fun for me. That's when things get exciting.
Well, and maybe that's why it's fun for me in the same way, because in something like this, I get told all the time by some dealers that I know who know I have this podcast. I don't go advertising it to them, but they find out and they know that I do this, and then they'll say, "How's your podcast going?" I'm like, "I don't know. Seems fine. Just get to talk to people and record it and pop it out and do it again,
Yeah.
And they'll say to me, "I'm never going on that podcast." And I'm like, "That's okay." That's fine.
Why?
Well, because it's, they got their little secrets. They got their little secret stash, their honey hole of information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a perception, I think. But to go and say, I'm afraid I would get on and get talkative, and in being talkative and feeling comfortable, I might say something that would let my guard down, and my nearest competitor would just say, "Oh, that's totally the hot button for them." I don't, I get it.
I don't. Yeah.
I get it. I get why they would be apprehensive. I think that, I guess what I'm saying is I appreciate that somebody like you who's done it in such a big way, and you're like, yeah, I'll share whatever I got going on. No one's, the majority of people aren't going to do the work to do it, but I encourage them to, because it'd be healthier for all of us. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the success, the secret, I think, to building a big business is to learn how to serve more people. And it's not just on that retail side. And if you have something that can be valuable for people, I mean, I'm not Jesus Christ over here. I'm going to monetize something. I'm building another business with the software, but it's a good business. It's a business that will actually help people and something that's going to improve these people's lives, or their financial lives at least. And that's just exciting to me. It comes down to you either have an abundance mentality or you have a scarcity mentality. And I think there is plenty of business for us to go around. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way, but that's just been my experience. Mm-hmm. And so this is a way to find more business. It's just a different type. You can take a lot of money on a few transactions, or you can take a little money on a whole bunch of transactions, and they're both viable.
Thanks again for listening to this lost tape of the Dealership Fix It podcast. These guest interviews still hit hard, and we're bringing them back re-edited, sharpened up, and focused entirely on what matters, helping dealerships like yours improve, grow, and win. If you got something out of this one, hit that share button or forward it to a dealership friend who needs it. And make sure you're following the show so we can keep bringing you more content like this with convos with people shaping the power sports industry. Catch you on the next one.
Still guessing what to pay on a used bike? Still holding aged units that just won't move? It's time for a real system. Moto Hunt's ultimate used inventory playbook shows how the best dealers are finding better inventory, pricing trades right, and turning used bikes faster with fewer mistakes and more margin. It's short, real, and free to download right now. Visit dealers.motohunt.com to grab your copy or check for the link in the notes.